Right, let's get into it. Today I'm walking you through 17 mistakes that people make with their pensions and their retirement planning. And I don't mean small, trivial slip-ups. I mean the kind of mistakes that quietly drain tens of thousands of pounds out of your future without you ever noticing. Because pensions are this strange, invisible thing sitting in the background of your life that most people never look at until it's far too late to do much about it. Now, I've also got a load of tips and a few genuinely little known tricks scattered throughout this video. Things that most people have simply never been told, partly because nobody profits from telling you. So wherever you are in life, whether you're 22 and just starting your first job, or you're in your 50s and starting to feel the clock ticking, or you're self-employed and you've been putting this off for a decade, there is something in here for you. I'm not going to waste your time padding this out with waffle, but I am going to slow down and properly explain each one, because these are the things that actually move the needle. So get comfortable, maybe grab a brew, and let's work through them one by one. Mistake number one, leaving your money sitting in the default fund. This is the big one, and it's why I'm starting with it. The overwhelming majority of people in workplace auto-enrollment schemes, and I mean the vast majority, never once change their investment choice. They get enrolled, the provider puts them into an off-the-shelf default fund, and there it sits, untouched, for years, sometimes for an entire working life. Now you might be thinking, so what? Surely the default is fine. And here's why it matters so much. The fund your money is invested in is, more than almost any other single factor, what determines how much you'll actually have when you retire. It's not just the amount you pay in, it's how hard that money works while it's sitting there. And the default fund is, by its very nature, a compromise. Think about it from the pension provider's point of view for a moment. They have to design one single fund that's going to be suitable for millions of people. Millions. All with completely different ages, different goals, different comfort levels with risk, different timelines. So how on earth do you build one fund for all of those people at once? You can't. Not really. So what they do instead is they play it safe. They make it cautious, mild, deliberately inoffensive, something that's unlikely to upset anyone or cause any dramatic swings. It's the financial equivalent of the blandest meal on the menu, the one that offends no one and excites no one. And the problem is that caution comes at a genuine cost to you, especially if you're young and you've got decades ahead of you for your money to grow. There's research that's looked at what happens when someone moves out of that cautious default and into a fund that sits just a bit further up the risk scale, something more suited to a longer time horizon. And the difference in projected retirement income is genuinely startling. For some people, we're talking many thousands of pounds extra every single year in retirement. Now, I have to be straight with you. Nobody can promise you returns. That is not how investing works, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying to you. Markets go up, markets go down. But here's the thing that gets me. We are constantly being told, save more, pay in more, tighten your belt, sacrifice today for tomorrow. And yet this one simple act, choosing a fund that actually fits your situation rather than accepting the default, can do an enormous amount of that heavy lifting for you. And the maddest part of all, it costs you absolutely nothing to do. You don't pay a penny extra. You just log into your account, you look at the available funds, and you pick one that suits what you're actually trying to achieve. That's it. So that's number one. Don't sleepwalk into the default and leave it there for 30 years without ever questioning it. Mistake number two, not using the help that's already available to you. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That's all well and good, but I don't have a clue how to pick a fund. I don't understand any of this. I don't want to get it wrong. And that's completely fair. So here's something most people have never heard of. You can ask your pension provider to release a sum of money from your pension tax-free, specifically to pay for professional retirement advice. It's a built-in allowance designed for exactly this purpose. The money has to go towards advice from a properly qualified financial advisor, and you can only use it a limited number of times across your whole life. But it exists, and barely anyone knows about it. So if you're sitting there feeling nervous or unsure, this is a brilliant way to get proper, tailored guidance on your own specific circumstances, paid for out of the pension itself without having to find the cash separately. Now, frustratingly, not every provider actually lets you do this, which is genuinely maddening, but plenty do, so it's absolutely worth asking the question. The worst they can say is no, and you've lost nothing by asking. Mistake number 3, ignoring partial transfers. This one's a bit more advanced, but stick with me because it can save you a fortune in fees over time. One of the worst things about workplace pension schemes is how little say you actually get. You don't choose the provider, your employer does. You often get a very limited range of investment options. And worst of all, you can end up paying fees that are, frankly, taking the mick, with no real way to do anything about it, because you're locked in to whatever your employer set up. But here's the thing a lot of people don't realize. In some cases, you can do something about it. Certain schemes will allow you to transfer part of your balance out into a pension of your own choosing, something with lower fees and far more investment freedom. This is called a partial transfer. The word partial is the important bit, because you normally need to leave some money behind in the workplace scheme to keep it active and to make sure you keep getting the benefits, like your employer's matching contributions, which you absolutely do not want to lose. So the strategy here isn't about ripping everything out and walking away. It's about letting a pot build up over time, then periodically moving a chunk of it across into your own pension, where you've got more control and you're paying less in charges. Now, a word of caution. Providers tend to really dislike this because every pound that leaves them is a pound they can't charge fees on. Well, my point of view is that this is your money and you should have options. So when you ask them about it, don't be surprised if they get a bit vague and evasive, telling you it depends on your scheme and that they can't really say. Be persistent. Have your policy number to hand, which you'll find by logging into your provider's portal, and ask them directly. And crucially, always confirm the details before you actually do anything, because the last thing you want is to accidentally boot yourself out of the scheme and lose your employer's contributions. Make it absolutely clear. I want to move some funds, but I want to stay an active member of the scheme. Is that possible? Mistake number 4, not claiming your tax relief. Right, this one is genuinely one of my favorites because it's free money that people are leaving on the table in absolutely enormous quantities. A huge proportion of higher rate and additional rate taxpayers who are entitled to claim extra tax relief on their pension contributions simply never claim it. We're talking about a vast number of people, year after year, missing out on money that is rightfully theirs. And the number of people affected keeps growing because more and more people are being pulled into the higher tax brackets than ever before. And here's the kicker. The taxman is in absolutely no rush to remind you that you should be doing this. It's not in their interest, so they stay quiet. So let me explain how it works. When you pay into a personal pension, like a self-invested personal pension, out of income that's already been taxed, you automatically get the basic rate relief added on top straight away. But if you're a higher rate or additional rate taxpayer, you're entitled to even more, and you have to actively claim that extra portion yourself, usually through a self-assessment tax return. Most people in that bracket who run their own pensions know this, but here's the bit that catches people out. If you're an employee paying into a workplace scheme, depending on how your particular scheme handles the tax, you might also need to do a self-assessment to claim what you're owed. It comes down to the specific way your scheme is set up. So the simplest thing to do is to go and ask your HR or payroll department how your pension handles tax relief. You can also contact the tax office directly and ask them. And here's the really good part. You can typically claim back several previous years' worth of relief in one go, and then keep claiming it every single year going forward. So it's not a one-off, it's a recurring win, year after year. Genuinely, go and check this one. It could be worth a serious amount of money to you. Mistake number 5, opting out altogether. There's still a meaningful number of people who, when they get auto-enrolled into their workplace pension, choose to opt straight back out. And look, I genuinely understand the temptation. Times are hard, money's tight. The thinking goes, I need that money now, not in 40 years. I'd rather have control of it myself. And honestly, I'm not even sure I'll live long enough to enjoy it. I get all of those feelings, I really do. But let me gently push back. The reality is, the odds are very good that you will grow old. And when you do, you'll want that money to be there. The healthiest way to think about your pension is simply as your own money, sitting in a deferred payment account, waiting for your future self. And on top of that, when you opt out, you're not just losing your own contributions, you're throwing away the free money your employer would have added on top. That's a pay rise you're choosing to decline. Now, I can't give you financial advice, I'm not allowed to and I won't, but I'll say this as plainly as I can. I really think you should stay in that scheme. Mistake number 6, losing track of old pensions. This one's almost heartbreaking when you see the scale of it. There are millions, and I mean millions, of pension pots floating around out there that have been lost or forgotten, sitting unclaimed by the people they actually belong to. Real money belonging to real people, just gathering dust. The good news is there's a free government tracing service you can use to hunt down pensions you've lost track of. And if that doesn't turn everything up, the old-fashioned method works too. Ring round every single employer you've ever worked for and ask them, who was the pension provider when I worked for you, and was I part of the scheme? It's a bit tedious, but if it reunites you with a forgotten pot, it's a couple of phone calls very well spent. Mistake number 7, forgetting to update your address. This is closely tied to the last one, and it's such an easy mistake to make. One of the main reasons people lose pensions in the first place is that they move house and simply never tell their old pension providers. People are pretty good about redirecting most of their post, but pensions from jobs long gone, they slip through the cracks. Barely anyone keeps their old providers updated when they move. So those pots from previous employers just quietly drift off and get lost. It's such a simple thing to fix. This is your money. Don't let it go missing just because you forgot to send a change of address note. Mistake number 8. Assuming auto-enrollment alone will be enough. This is a big one, and it catches out a lot of well-meaning people who think they're doing the right thing. The general consensus among experts is that you want to be putting somewhere in the region of 10 to 15% of your income towards your retirement. Now, most people in an auto-enrollment scheme are paying in around 8%. So far, so close, you might think. But here's the catch that almost nobody realizes. It's not 8% of your whole salary. The contributions are calculated on something called a band of qualifying earnings. What that means in plain English is that there's a slice at the bottom of your salary that's excluded and a cap at the top. And the percentage is only applied to the bit in the middle. So if you earn, say, £25,000, you don't pay 8% of the full 25 grand. You pay it on the amount left after you knock off that bottom slice. Which means, in reality, you're paying in noticeably less than you probably thought you were. Now, to be fair, plenty of employers are more generous than this bare legal minimum, and that's brilliant. But the minimum is the minimum. So if you're young, in your early 20s, and you keep this up consistently for your whole working life, it might just about get you there. But if you're older, If you're in your 40s and pensions weren't really a thing for you in your early career and you didn't save much back then, you may well need to actively top this up to catch up. You can do that either by paying more into your workplace scheme or by setting up a separate personal pension on the side. Anything is better than nothing. Look, auto-enrollment is a genuinely brilliant thing. It's got millions of people saving who otherwise wouldn't be. But by its very design, it creates a kind of apathy, a set it and forget it mentality, where people assume that because they're enrolled, everything's sorted. And the question everyone needs to actually stop and ask themselves is simply this: am I really saving enough here? Mistake number 9, for the self-employed, not saving at all. That last point was mostly for employed people. This one's for the self-employed. And honestly, it's an even bigger concern, because the numbers here are pretty alarming. The overwhelming majority of self-employed people aren't paying anything into a pension whatsoever. And I understand the reasoning. You're building a business. You might be hoping to sell it one day, or you might genuinely believe that reinvesting every spare pound back into the business is a better use of your money than locking it away in a pension. And sometimes that's even true in the short term. But here's the hard reality. One day you won't be able to work. And that life-changing business exit you've been dreaming of, it might never come. Most businesses don't end in a big payday. So having a pension, even a modest one, ticking away on the side, gives you a plan B for later life, a safety net for when you need it. And on top of that, it's a genuinely tax-efficient way to save, especially if you operate through a limited company, because contributions into your pension can reduce your company's tax bill. So you're saving for your future and being smart with tax at the same time. If you're self-employed and you've been putting this off, please, even something small, start. Mistake number 10, never shopping around. Fees. Let's talk about fees, because they're the silent killer of pension pots. A fee that sounds tiny, just 1% a year, doesn't sound like much, does it? But compounded over 25 or 30 years, that seemingly small percentage can quietly eat up a frighteningly large chunk of your final pot. A big slice of your retirement gone, not to the market, not to bad luck, but to charges. Now, fees aren't everything. A cheaper option isn't automatically a better one, but here's why they matter so much. Fees are one of the very few things in this whole game that you can actually control with certainty. You can't control the markets, you can't control the government, but you can control what you're paying. And there has never been more choice available than there is right now. So just because you've been with the same platform or broker for years out of habit doesn't mean you should stay with them. Keep an eye on what you're being charged, compare it to what's out there now, and be willing to vote with your feet and move. A lot of long-established big-name firms are quietly coasting on their reputation while charging people well over the odds. Don't let loyalty cost you your retirement. Mistake number 11, counting on the state pension. Now this one. The younger you are, the more this applies to you. As things stand today, the state pension is a genuinely important part of retirement for most people. And that's true even for the wealthier end of the spectrum, where it still makes up a meaningful slice of their total income. But I have a strong suspicion that this is going to change over the coming decades. I'll be straight with you. In its current form, the long-term outlook for the state pension system looks shaky. A lot of serious people who study this stuff believe the current setup simply isn't sustainable in the long run. There's been talk that we might eventually drift towards a means-tested system, where if you've got enough money of your own, you get less from the state, or perhaps nothing at all. Now, I'm not predicting that with certainty, that's just one possibility among several. But the broader point stands. If you're young, do not build your entire retirement plan on the assumption that the state pension will be there in its current generous form when you finally get there. Treat anything you do get from it as a bonus, not the foundation. Mistake number 12. Drawing your money too early or for no reason. Right, now let's shift to the other end of the timeline. We've talked about the building up years. Now let's talk about mistakes people make once they actually reach retirement. From a certain age onwards, you're allowed to take a portion of your pension, up to a quarter of it, as a tax-free lump sum, up to a set maximum limit. And here's a surprising fact. A huge number of people aren't even aware they can do this. But here's the crucial bit. Just because you can take that lump sum doesn't mean you should. What tends to happen is that people reach that age and there's this psychological itch. They think, I haven't been able to touch this money for decades and now I can. Give me all of it. And they pull the whole lot out. Sometimes there's a genuinely good reason. Maybe you want to clear your mortgage and that brings you real peace of mind. Fair enough. But to take that money out and just have it sitting in a bank account doing nothing, that's not just pointless, it's actively harmful to your wealth, because that money could have stayed inside the pension, growing and compounding within that lovely tax-protected wrapper. Personally, my own plan is to try and get myself to a position where I don't need to grab that lump sum all in one go. Instead, I'd rather use the tax-free element to draw a steady, tax-free income on a monthly basis, and then supplement that with other tax-free savings, so I can take a healthy income every month without handing over a chunk of it in tax. Now, if you genuinely want to take the lump sum in one go, then go for it. It's your money and your choice. But have an actual plan for what you're going to do with it. Don't just yank it out for the sake of it, because taking it all at once can seriously reduce your ability to be tax efficient down the line. Mistake number 13. Accidentally triggering the rule that slashes your contributions. This is a technical one, but it's really important if you're in the run-up to retirement. There's a particular rule in the pension system that limits how much you're allowed to contribute once you start flexibly accessing your pension. Now, simply taking your tax-free lump sum on its own is generally fine. That won't usually cause a problem. But there's a specific list of actions that will trip this wire. And once it's triggered, the amount you're allowed to pay into your pension each year, with all the tax relief and employer contributions included, drops dramatically. We're talking a huge reduction, from a generous annual allowance right down to a fraction of it. And the cruel timing of it is that this often happens at exactly the stage of life when you might really be trying to pile money into your pension to make the most of your final working years. So please, tread carefully here. Understand what actually triggers this rule before you start accessing things, and don't set it off by accident. Mistake number 14. Focusing on a pension and nothing else. Pensions are, all things considered, probably the best all-round vehicle for retirement saving, when you factor in just how tax efficient they are. But they have one significant restriction. Your money is locked away, and you can't get at it until a certain age. And this applies just as much to the generous defined benefit schemes that a lot of people in public service enjoy, the nurses, the doctors, the teachers, and so on. Brilliant pensions, but locked up until a set age. So the smart move is to also build up a pot on the side that you can actually access whenever you like, something like a tax-free stocks and shares savings account. That gives you flexibility and control over your own timeline. For example, if my goal was to stop working early, well before my pension unlocks, I'd use that accessible pot to fund the gap between stopping work and my pension kicking in. I get a lot of people, especially those public sector workers, asking me, I've got a fantastic pension, but I can't touch it until I'm older. What do I do in the meantime? And the honest answer is, that's exactly what an accessible side pot is for. I'll be upfront. I tend to steer clear of going deep on defined benefit schemes specifically because they're genuinely complicated and I'd rather not pretend to be an expert on something I'm not. But the general principle holds for everyone. Having multiple pots with different rules and different access ages gives you the flexibility to adapt to whatever life and whatever the government throws at you between now and the day you retire. Mistake number 15, and this one's aimed squarely at the people in charge. Governments constantly meddling. I doubt anyone with any actual power is going to watch this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because it genuinely is one of the biggest problems we face. The single most damaging thing in the whole pensions landscape is the government's relentless meddling with the rules. They treat pensions like a political football, something to kick around to win votes, constantly tinkering with what's allowed and what isn't. And in doing so, they create this fog of uncertainty and fear around the entire subject. And here's why that's so corrosive. You cannot, in good conscience, ask people to lock their money away for 30, 40 years and then keep changing the rules of the game on them practically every single year. It destroys confidence. It makes people nervous about committing. So my plea, for whatever it's worth, is simple. Set the rules, stick to them, and then leave the bloody things alone, so that people across the country can actually feel confident putting their hard-earned money into them. Mistake number 16, not setting up a pension for your kids. Now this one isn't really a mistake so much as a missed opportunity, and it might just be one of the greatest financial gifts you can ever give a child. You can open a junior pension for a child and start putting a little money in while they're still young. And because they've got their entire life ahead of them, that money has the most precious thing of all working in its favour: time. Decades and decades for it to compound and grow. The numbers, given that kind of time horizon, can become genuinely staggering. And there are some lovely built-in advantages. They can't touch it during their younger years, which means they can't blow it on something daft. It picks up tax relief, just like an adult pension, so the government effectively tops up your contributions. There's a limit on how much you can put in each year, and the maximum is quite high. But here's the thing, you don't need to go anywhere near that maximum to make a real difference. You could put in a small amount each month, 10 or 20, and add a bit extra on birthdays, and over the years it quietly builds into something significant. And then imagine the moment, years down the line, when your child finally has that realization we all eventually have. Oh no, I need to be saving for retirement. And you get to turn round and say, well actually, I've been quietly building this up for you since you were tiny. It's been working away in the background this whole time. Now it's yours to take over. That's a hell of a gift. Mistake number 17, and this is the last one. Being far too hard on yourself. I'm honestly guilty of this one myself sometimes. So much of the conversation around pensions, certainly in the media, is relentless doom and gloom. Pension crisis this, you're not saving enough that, fear-mongering at every turn. And it can leave people feeling anxious, hopeless, and like there's no point even trying. But here's the truth I want you to take away from all of this. If you just actively engage with your pension, if you take a bit of ownership, look to reduce the fees you're paying, and pick a fund that genuinely suits you instead of mindlessly accepting the default, you can make a meaningful, real difference to how much you end up with. And you can do that potentially without paying in a single extra penny. So let's take some genuine ownership of what is, for most of us, likely to be the single most valuable asset we'll ever own. Let's actually understand what we're invested in, why we're invested in it, when we're going to access it, and what we're going to do with that money when the time comes. And if you've reached the end of this video and you're sitting there thinking, right, this is all great, but I feel like I've started far too late and I haven't got a clue what to do, then please don't panic, because I've got your back on that too. You should watch this video next, where I show you that it is not only entirely possible to build up a really comfortable retirement later in life, but that in some cases it might actually be the optimal way to do it. So go and watch that one next. And until then, take care of yourselves, take a bit of ownership of this stuff, and have a great day.